Now we will be discussing about APLA, also known as antiphospholipid antibody syndrome, or the new terminology is antiphospholipid syndrome or APS. It is the most common acquired thrombophilia. Now, what is the most common inherited thrombophilia? It is factor V lead-in mutation, and it causes recurrent thrombosis and recurrent pregnancy loss. And this recurrent thrombosis is the single most important feature of antiphospholipid syndrome. Now this can be associated with eclampsia, intrauterine growth restriction, preterm labor can occur in APLA patient, and then fetal death can also be uh, the complication. Now there are three antibodies that can lead to antiphospholipid syndrome. These includes, first one is lupus anticoagulant, then anti beta 2 glycoprotein 1 antibody, also known as apolipoprotein H antibody, anti-cardiolipin antibodies. APS can be divided into two types: primary APS and secondary APS. If there is association with any connective tissue disorders like SLE, so one third patient of SLE can develop APS, and this is known as secondary APLA. And if SLE is having thrombosis like conditions like MITIA and DVT, that is myocardial infarction, transient ischemic attacks, deep vein thrombosis, then we always suspect APLA, and this is secondary APLA. But if it is not occurring without any connective tissue disorder, then it is primary APS or primary antiphospholipid syndrome. Now what is the pathophysiology? What occurs is that the phospholipids that are present in the cell membranes are the main lipid constituents of the cell and cell organelles, and this phospholipid is associated with proteins inside the cell with non-covalent bonds. So these antibodies are directed against either these antibodies or either these phospholipids or proteins, and they bind and cause the symptoms. Now these can be GAM type, IgG, IgA, IgM, and there are some proportional of antibodies present in normal men and women, but they do not manifest the disease clinically. So what these antibodies can do, there are two components occurring together. First one is the widespread thrombosis, which is the first hit, and there is activation of the procoagulants. These procoagulants can lead to thrombosis by reducing the platelet apoptosis and hence activate the platelet, resulting in platelet aggregation. Now there is also anticoagulants scarcity or inactivation of the natural anticoagulants like protein C and protein S. These protein C and protein S keeps a check on coagulation cascade, and it has to bind phospholipids. Now this binding of phospholipids with protein C and protein S does not occur because of the presence of antibody binding, and hence there is inactivation of these anticoagulants. So there is diminished protein C protein S activity, and also there is prothrombin activation, which leads to thrombosis. The third mechanism is complement activation. So three mechanisms are occurring, that is the activation of procoagulants, inactivation of natural anticoagulants, and complement activation. Second is endothelial injury. Antiphospholipids antibodies damages the endothelium, which causes endothelial injury, and this leads to capillary leakage, which in turn leads to thrombocytopenia. So this is the second hit. So there is thrombosis also due to first hit, and there is thrombosis along with thrombocytopenia is present, and when the platelet count is checked, it is either between 50,000 to 1 lakh, but there is no bleeding. The second hit is due to inflammatory response against these antibodies, and the second hit could be due to estrogen consumption in the OCPs, obesity, or smoking. Now what is the stimulus for antibody production? It is unclear, but it could be due to preceding infection or any other cause which can cause endothelial dysfunction like preeclampsia. Now what happens is that we have trophoblast within the placenta, and this trophoblast is divided into two parts: cytotrophoblast and the syncytial trophoblast. The syncytial trophoblast is the hormone factory of the placenta, while the cytotrophoblast is further divided into villous and extravillous trophoblast. This extravillous trophoblast is interstitial and endovascular, and this extravillous trophoblast help in trophoblastic remodeling. So what happens in syncytial trophoblast? AP actions are multifactorial. They damages the syncytial trophoblast, and hence syncytial trophoblast basement membrane is expressed and exposed, and there is platelet adherence, and there is formation of thrombosis also, which leads to placental infarction and uteroplacental insufficiency, and can cause preterm labor, intrauterine growth restriction, and even fetal death also. Now what this does in extravillous trophoblast? This extravillous trophoblast converts spiral arteries from from high resistance to low resistance vessels, and which is known as trophoblastic remodeling. So if antibodies are against this extravenous trophoblast, so the cytotrophoblast becomes defective and there is no vascular remodeling. This leads to early onset of preeclampsia, and this early onset preeclampsia affects all the organs and cause multi-organ dysfunction and IUGR. Now these antibodies most commonly can be lupus anticoagulant, but the worst antibody is anti-beta 2 glycoprotein antibody. So if the titer is more than 2 antibodies are present, then the risk of pregnancy loss is 93%, while if only one antibody is present, then risk of pregnancy loss is around 63%, and the severity of complication is directly proportional to the titer of antiphospholipid antibodies. Now the complications of APLA is recurrent pregnancy loss, fetal death, intrauterine growth restriction, preterm labor, early onset preeclampsia, and can also develop HELLP syndrome. There is one entity known as CAPS or Asherson syndrome. What is CAPS? CAPS is catastrophic antiphospholipid antibody syndrome, and Asherson syndrome. This is a rapidly progressing thromboembolic disorders in which more than 3 systems are involved within a week due to cytokine storm, and because of this presentation there is high maternal mortality in these cases, and 50% of the cases trigger is present and identifiable. So what is the diagnostic criteria? There are 4 criteria that more than 3 organ systems are involved, and the duration is less than 1 week. On histopathological examination there is confirmation by small vessel occlusion in at least one organ or tissue, and labs also suggest the presence of lupus anticoagulant, anticardiolipin, and anti-beta 2 glycoprotein antibody. So this is CAPS, also known as Asherson syndrome. There is also one similar syndrome known as Asherman syndrome, which is occurring due to excessive curettage of the uterine cavity, and there is formation of adhesions within the uterine cavity. So the patient can present with hypomenorrhea, amenorrhea, etc. Now let's discuss antibodies one by one. First one is anti-beta 2 glycoprotein 1 antibody. This antibody is directed against beta 2 glycoprotein 1 antigen, which is present on the syncytial trophoblast. So the role of this antibody is to inhibit the prothrombinase activity, and hence it increases the amount of prothrombin, leading to activation of coagulation cascade and hence thrombosis. This antibody can be detected by ELISA and is of IgG or IgM type. The second antibody is anticardiolipin antibody, which is the most sensitive, and it is directed against cardiolipin protein, which is present abundantly in the mitochondrial membranes and the platelets, and this can also be detected by ELISA. Now the third antibody is lupus anticoagulant, which is most common and most specific. This antibody when present in vitro can cause prolonged APTT, and Russell Viper clotting time can be increased, but when it is present inside the body, that is in vivo, it paradoxically brings about thrombosis by causing platelet injury and platelet aggregation. So in vivo and in vitro functions are completely opposite. Classically, patient can have thrombosis and thrombocytopenia due to endothelial injury. Most specific antibody is lupus anticoagulant, and it is the only antibody which can be associated with adverse pregnancy outcome and associated with residual vasculopathy, placental infarction, early onset preeclampsia, and recurrent pregnancy loss. We can also detect it by prolonged APTT and Russell Viper venom testing or Cowlin clotting time. There is one pregnant study which is done on this antibody and its positivity on these antibodies and its positivity, and it cannot be detected by ELISA, while the rest 2 antibodies can be detected by ELISA. Now there are also another antibodies that can be present, but we do not test them. These are antibody against protein C, protein S, and annexin 5 protein, which is expressed in high concentration in syncytial trophoblast. Although they can lead to thrombosis, and clinical picture is similar to APLA, but ACOG does not recommend the testing of these antibodies. Now, how will the patient presents to you? The most common presentation, as we all know, is thrombosis. This thrombosis can be venous or arterial, but the venous thrombosis is more common as compared to arterial thrombosis. The venous thrombosis can be in the form of thromboembolism, deep vein thrombosis, thrombophlebitis, livedoreticularis, and Budd-Chiari syndrome. DVT is the most common clinical manifestation. Arterial thrombosis can be in the form of TIA, stroke, and most common present manifestation is arterial thrombosis. So the most common clinical manifestation among venous thrombosis is DVT, and in arterial thrombosis it is TIA or stroke. Patient can also present with limb sacs, endocarditis, MI or gangrene. The hematological complication is thrombosis with thrombocytopenia, but there is no bleeding. And also in hemoglobin there is autoimmune hemolytic anemia. Also renal manifestations can occur, causing glomerular thrombosis. Small vessels can be involved, leading to TMA, as in catastrophic APS. Neurological complications like stroke, migraine, epilepsy, chorea, multiple sclerosis like syndrome can occur. Among musculoskeletal complications, Jacquard's arthropathy, arthralgia, arthritis can occur, and pregnancy can be leading to complications like preterm labor, recurrent pregnancy loss, PIH, UGR, and even fetal death also. Now, as we already discussed, what is the most common congenital thrombophilia? It is factor V Leiden mutation, while acquired thrombophilia is APS. Overall, most common presentation is DVT. Most common symptom involved is CNS, and there is Sneddon syndrome in which there is HSIL. HSIL is H for hypertension, S for stroke, and L for livedo reticularis, while this is associated with Sneddon syndrome, etc. Now, how will you make a diagnosis of antiphospholipid antibody syndrome? So there is one criteria which is very important. This is modified Saporose criteria, also known as the Sydney criteria. Here we take one clinical criteria and one lab criteria to fulfill the diagnosis. So what is the clinical criteria? So you have to remember it like 2 times we have to consider abortion. If the gestational age is less, then abortion are more. So at less than 10 weeks, more than 3 consecutive unidentifiable fetal losses, and if the gestational age is more, means more than 10 weeks, then more than one fetal loss. Also there is occurrence of preterm delivery before 34 weeks of gestation. So more than one preterm delivery before 34 weeks of gestation, which could be due to severe preeclampsia or uteroplacental insufficiency. And there is one episode of thrombosis, either arterial, venous, or small vessel. So this is the clinical criteria. So one clinical criteria is sufficient to make the diagnosis of APLA, and the lab criteria includes the 3 antibodies. Just presence of lupus anticoagulant is sufficient, which can be detected by diluted Russell Viper venom test, or the Cowlin test, or the prolonged APTT. Second is we check the titers of anticardiolipin antibodies. So medium to high levels of IgM antibodies and cardiolipin antibodies, the level is more than 40 international unit, while the presence of anti-beta 2 glycoprotein 1 antibody, either IgM, IgG, exceeding 99 percentile. So this is the labs criteria, and only one clinical criteria and lab criteria is sufficient to make the diagnosis. And if the diagnosis is made, then we have to repeat the test again 12 weeks apart. So any one criteria presents on 2 occasions at least 12 weeks apart fulfills the lab criteria. Now, coming to the management part, we advise aspirin and heparin. Heparin is given when a patient of APS has history of thrombosis, abortion, or stillbirth. Low molecular weight heparin like enoxaparin is preferred, and it should be started when the intrauterine pregnancy is confirmed. We can either give prophylactic low molecular weight heparin or unfractionated heparin, or therapeutic low molecular weight or unfractionated heparin. Now, if we are giving low molecular weight heparin, then the dose differs. So if we are giving enoxaparin, then 40 mg subcutaneous OD dose is sufficient, while if in case of therapeutic doses, the dose is calculated by 1 mg per kg, or if the female is 40 kilograms, then her dose would be 40 mg BD or 12 hourly. Dalteparin is given once a day, 5000 international unit. Nadaparin, Tenzaparin are another drugs which can be tried. Dalteparin in therapeutic low molecular weight heparin, it is given in the dose of 200 international unit per kg once a day. And for this enoxaparin, it has X and A. So we monitor factor 10A levels, and the target level is 0.6 to 1.0 units per ml, and it should be checked 4 hours after the last injection. Now, if we are giving unfractionated heparin, then unfractionated heparin in the first trimester, second trimester, and third trimester differs. The dose is slightly increased. So in first trimester we give 5k units subcutaneously BD, and in second trimester 7500k units per 12 hourly, and in third trimester 10k units SC 12 hourly. But if therapeutic dose is given, then then the dose remains same in all trimester, and it is 10k units subcutaneously every 12 hourly. For unfractionated heparin, we do APTT testing, and the target APTT should be 1.5 to 2.5 times, and the testing should be done 6 hours after the last injection. Now coming to aspirin, what aspirins do, it blocks the conversion of arachidonic acid to thromboxane A2 while sparing prostacyclin production. Thromboxane A2 usually causes platelet aggregation and vasoconstriction, while prostacyclin causes vasodilation. The only major side effect of aspirin is slight risk of small vessel bleeding during surgical procedure. Low dose aspirin in a dose of 81 grams is recommended by ACOG to be used in patients with SLE and APS. If only APLA antibodies are present, there is no abortion, stillbirth, thrombosis, then only aspirin is sufficient, and it should not be continued after delivery. Means we have to give it only pregnancy only, and only aspirin is sufficient. It should be started as soon as UPT is positive with SLE and APLA patient. Now, how will you start aspirin and low molecular weight heparin in the patients? If there is APS based on history of preterm labor and presence of anti-phospholipid antibodies, so in antepartum period we have to give low dose aspirin, and postpartum period aspirin we have to give for 6 weeks after vaginal delivery, and in case of cesarean section for 6 weeks we have to give prophylactic low molecular weight heparin as well as aspirin also. Only antibodies are present but there is no symptomatology, then in both cases low molecular weight heparin is sufficient and throughout pregnancy, and after delivery aspirin for 6 weeks. And here it is same as the previous case, but if there is history of thrombosis, so in above cases there is no history of thrombosis, but if there is history of thrombosis and APLA is positive, then therapeutic dose of low molecular weight heparin is started along with UPT, along with aspirin after UPT, and warfarin for indefinite time in the postpartum period, because there is association with thrombosis. So if APS is based on the pregnancy loss more than 3 in 10 weeks or more than 1 in more than 10 weeks and antibodies are present, then we have again to give because a definitive diagnosis is made, so low molecular weight heparin and aspirin is given, but in a prophylactic dose because there is no thrombosis, hence we are giving prophylactic low molecular weight heparin in both the cases regardless of the route of delivery. Steroids are not considered in primary APS, but if patient is having SLE means secondary APLA, then steroid therapy can be considered. Hydroxychloroquine is sufficient for the treatment of SLE. Usually we do not prescribe prednisolone, and if there is risk of relapse or flare, then dose of prednisolone should be maintained to the lowest effective level, and it reduces the risk of thrombosis and improves pregnancy outcomes. IVIG therapy has limited role and it is highly expensive, so it is not recommended also. IVIG can be given in catastrophic APS or CAPS where triple therapy treatment is given. What is triple therapy? Triple therapy means we have to give heparin, steroids and IVIG or Plex. If APS patient developed HIT, then also IVIG has a role, and it is given at a dose of 2 grams per kg per day for 5 days. Statins have protective effect on the endothelium, but they are contraindicated in pregnancy due to risk of congenital malformation, and hence they are not tried in these patients of APLA.